Hello everybody, this is Gurley Vines, and this is part 5 of my tarot journal. On the last episode, which took me forever to post, I'll be posting with this episode, this 5th episode, was the Ace of Swords and Nine of Cups. It was my least favorite performance that I've done so far because I think that it took me way too long to get to the point of what the cards were, or maybe I didn't fully formulate I didn't do justice to the cards, which is relevant to the Ace of Swords because that single sword in the Ace of Swords is the sword being held by Lady Justice in the Adjustment card, which it is called in the Thoth Tarot, so there's a little connection there. The conclusion that I came to was something really simple, because the Ace of Swords deals with a breakthrough, the eureka moment of a mental breakthrough, because the swords deal with the mind, and coming up with a new idea, the birth of a new idea springing forth. The Nine of Cups deals with happiness. It is the number 9, and the way I look at that, it's like the best aspects of the cups, the Three of Cups and the Six of Cups, which are maybe aren't the best aspects, because as we went over the Two of Cups, that is a pretty good aspect as well. The Three of Cups is abundance, and the Six of Cups is pleasure, and they both allude to an expanded view of happiness, as opposed to a more insular, one-on-one, intimate happiness that you have with a person, a place, or a thing. It is an expanded happiness that interconnects the history of your happiness with this thing and connects it to a peak moment, or not a moment, but even a peak sequence of events or years where you just have a really good run of things, and it comes from the invested emotion of working towards a happiness, like say a rewarding career, rewarding relationship, where the time has been put in, the work has been put in, and you are reaping what you sow. So the Ace of Swords is a breakthrough aha moment of how to achieve that in one's life, which is arguably something most people are trying to achieve, is that pinnacle of happiness. I would venture that you're very lucky if you get to that. I don't think a lot of people achieve that, but everybody's always striving for it. I think I saw a title of an article that said that your hopes for future happiness are probably exaggerated, because everybody is kind of always projecting and hoping that, the work that I put in now, I will have some kind of happiness, some supreme happiness in the future. Religious people do it, that they're working the toil they do on this earth, or the good deeds they do on this earth, which I'm not sure if a lot of religious people actually adhere to that, but in theory, the good deeds they do in the name of God, it will grant them the reward of happiness in the afterlife. So that supreme kind of happiness, and then with the Ten of Cups that comes after, it's like a little too happy, right? You're a little too safe in your happiness, right? And then you're starting to get back into the beginning of the next cycle. So I think it was my weakest video just because I was redundant. It was taking me a long time to say what I needed to say. I felt like it was a little boring. Yeah, and always after I sort of digest the previous video, I feel like I have a better understanding of what those combinations are, what those combinations mean, and I think that I will always, my understanding of these concepts will always grow and evolve and change. You know, maybe I'm completely wrong the first or second time around. I mean, I'm not even sure there is a right and wrong, because it's all subjective based on my interpretation of it and what those cards mean to me. And see, there I go. I need to enunciate. I have that thick southern tongue that just wants to drag me down into some unintelligible unintelligible slang, you know. Yeah. Okay. I need to do like jaw exercises before I start these videos. I haven't posted anything in a while, which is bad because I've wanted to make this a daily exercise. Oh, did I mention already that I'm Gurley Vines? Not my real name, but that's the name I put. Yeah, I need to mention that because it's my brand. That's my brand. So I need to make sure at the beginning of every video, say, hey, this is Gurley Vines, and this is my TarotJournal. So get that out of the way. That's, yeah. So yeah, I know I haven't posted in a while. Energy's been kind of low. You know, I think, you know, it does take a certain panache and pizzazz for people to want to watch you. And after my last video, I felt like I just kind of threw it up there. And sometimes I think it's better to do that than do nothing, especially in the YouTube game, because, you know, the more I flood you guys with content, the harder I am to miss. And then you get to see videos, and, you know, whether it's good or bad, attention is attention, because it's an attention-seeking game, and I intend to play it well. So, yeah. So without further ado, I'm going to take my Thoth Tarot, one of the best decks in my humble opinion of the tarot cards. And I'm not going to go into who created it and whatnot. Google it. I mentioned it in previous videos. But, you know, Crowley, Lady Frida Harris. I guess it would take a lot of time for me to mention that. And just so you guys know, this is random. I'm flipping them, shuffling, flipping, mixing it up, allowing the divine to speak to me through randomness and synchronicity and all that kind of shit. I'm a skeptic. I don't really believe in all this juju. But I do. It's weird. I'm in kind of this weird in-between place that, because I'm agnostic about a lot of things, and I don't know for sure if there's any kind of magic out there. You know, I keep myself open to it, right? I like poetry and stuff like that. I keep myself open to abstract concepts. You know, I definitely had personal moments, and it's always subjective, right? It's not like there are witnesses around and a lot of people see the same thing, unless they're like really caught up in some. Oh, I guess they do. I guess there are moments where people sort of share the same illusions and or the same madness, and you know, and especially if you're like on the same drugs, you'll probably see the same types of hallucinations. So that can happen. But I mean, you know, the little mystical moments that I've had, they have been so subjective that I can't rule out that it was just some weird, you know, it was just some passing thing, some overindulgence of the imagination, or I didn't get enough sleep or whatever. You know, I feel like there's always a reason for the mystical things that happen. And they're never so blatant, I feel like. If there were actually some other dimensions or some spirits, I don't know why they would be so inaccessible and then so hard for people to tap into in a way that it would be proven. So that's where my skepticism lies, is that it just seems so subjective. But either way, I think this is a great psychological tool. I think everybody should use the tarot and not take it literally or seriously, but use it as a way of mode of self-reflection, and a way of exploring your inner world and your outer world. Okay, so more of this. Get that randomness in there. Randomness, right? I'm still. Oh, I saw a peek of a tarot card. I'm gonna have to flip it. I can't see. Was the ten of discs or pentacles, and so I gotta really flip it in there because I don't want to have my subconscious mind try to find a way of picking that card, because that's a pretty good card. You know, that's wealth. But I won't go into that right now. All right, few more little cut it up. Okay, pick 2 cards here. Bada bing, bada boom. Oh, well, I mentioned this card right here. This is the adjustment card, and the sword that she is holding is the Ace of Swords. That was in my last reading that I haven't, in the 4th episode that I have not posted, but I will post whenever I post this one. So, and then there is the 10 of Cups. So since the 10 of Cups is in my left hand, I'm going to take this as sort of the base card, and this is the crossing card. But really, the way I've been reading these, I'm just kind of treating them with having equal weight, and then I'm like, you know, putting them together in this hybrid reading. And speaking of equality, you know, you have the Libra scales, and this card. This is a different version of Justice, as it is called in the other tarot decks. It's called Adjustment in Crowley's deck, because, I mean, I don't know for sure why. My interpretation of why he called it Adjustment as opposed to Justice, because I think that, I'm not sure if Crowley really subscribed to the idea of there being real justice in the universe. You know, justice is very subjective. I mean, balance, in a way, is kind of subjective, although there is sort of a sense of balance mathematically in the world. But whether that balance is actual justice, like, because morality is a man-made concept, you know, who's to say whether imprisoning somebody for life is really going to make up for, you know, a life taken? I mean, it doesn't fix anything, and it's not going to bring the person back, and it's not going to really take away the sorrow. I mean, I guess there's kind of this closure knowing the person didn't get away with it, but it doesn't equal what happened to the person. It just kind of brings a sense of relief, like that person that took somebody's life is being locked away. But, I mean, if you think about it another way, like, that person that's being locked away can still cause damage to people within that prison system, thus making the prison less safe for lesser offenders. And then, you know, taxpayers have to pay for the people staying in that prison. And the prison itself is corrupt, so it's like that person is just going to be in prison suffering. And who knows if there's any kind of real reflection going on in terms of what they've done. So, and who am I to say what is fair and what's not? But I know that any kind of man-made construct of fairness is just man-made, and it's only enforced because the powers that be enforce it. It's not because it is a universal law. So, and I think that Crowley would only adhere to something so much if it was kind of, I feel like the idea of justice is a little phony to him, perhaps. So adjustment is basically sort of adjusting yourself to bring more balance and harmony to your situation. So let me get to this. Let me go to the 10 of Cups, which is satiety. Satiety. Satiety? Satiety. Satiety. I think that's how you say satiety. It's Satiety. You know, I do not know exactly how to say that. Satiety, like being satiated. Satiety. Okay. Never used that word in a sentence. I've even looked at it on the card, and I just kind of look at it on my head, and I'm like, okay, I know what that means. It means, being sated. So being sated, it's like being full. You eat a meal, and you are filled by it. You feel comforted and relieved by, you've had enough. You're satisfied. But this card, it's a beautiful card. Like there's the Ten of Cups are in the Tree of Life setting with, the Tree of Life is set up like this. And each of the Sephiroth, which is what each of these are called, are the cups. And the top cup is splashing down to all the other cups, filling all the cups. And it seems pretty symmetrical, and it's not a bad card to have. It's not a bad card because it comes after happiness. But it's where the happiness is, and this was mentioned. Wow, these two cards connect to my previous reading, which you saw me flipping those cards. I always show you guys that I'm flipping those cards. I have to find a way to make it where it never leaves the side of the computer, because this was not staged. These two cards connect to the previous. The Ace of Swords connects to this card, and then the Nine of Cups connects to this one. And so let me think. Let me think real quick. This is where the happiness starts to grow stale, right? Because that peaked feeling, like a peak experience, the honeymoon stage of any happy experience, whether you're in a relationship or on a drug, or you're really enjoying your career, you're at the peak of your game, the peak of your career. That is what happiness is. This is kind of the come down. Now, it's not like a bad come down. It's not like a plummet, but it's where it's starting to get comfortable. Every day is starting to get kind of samey, right? Whether it's in your career or it's in your relationship, or whether it's the drugs you're doing, your brain's getting used to that situation, right? And you're like, oh, I'm starting to get to where I need something new, right? And this is the 10. So each of the cards and each of the suits are 1 through 10. So after this, it would go back to the Ace of Cups, or if you're going to follow it in the sequence of each suit, there's the wands, there's the cups, and then there's the swords, and then at the very end is the discs. So the Ace of Swords and the last reading would have come after this card, okay? But we have its cousin of a higher octave, which is Adjustment. And you have Lady Justice, and she is blindfolded, and she is in this, she's surrounded in these cold blues, which in my mind represent logic, and she's in this very symmetrical setting, and she's balancing the Alpha and the Omega. She has got the Ace of Swords. Instead of it being pointed downward up into the sky, which is like a new idea being conjured out of the nothingness, the sword is being pointed down towards the earth, which means this idea. So I'm going to unpack this one. This card, I have cards, I have favorites when it comes to cards. This card isn't my favorite. I don't get very excited about talking about this card. In my opinion, the idea of balance is not exciting. I think it's necessary to achieve balance. I also think of law and law enforcement when I think of this because of the idea of justice. And then I always think of how corrupt it is. To me, this is a cold, clinical card, and it's got the swords in it, so it deals with the mind, and it's applying that cold, clinical sense of adjustment, right? And when I think of adjustment, I think of that as a cold word too. And it's like, oh, I'm slowly adjusting to a situation with my mind. There's like a kind of an empty phoniness to it. I've got to adjust to this new group dynamic, or I've got to adjust. I have to adjust in order to survive, instead of doing something from your heart, which is what I see with the cups. I'm more of an emotional guy. So I go from sort of like feeling and all that kind of stuff. And when I think of cold, sterile logic, I definitely think of the swords. And then the sword is pointed down towards the earth. And it's that cold logic applied to material things in the material world and achieving a sense of balance. So I can see how these two cards play together in the sense that achieving that cold, clinical sense of balance can stifle the cups. I feel like cups go better with the wands. And then I think the swords go better with the earth. I think that, the swords and the wands are both, let me do my air quotes, they're both male, they're both active principles or whatever. And then the earth and then the pentacles or the discs and then the cups are both passive receptive, right? And I think that this is sort of crossing two different, the emotions and then the mind. They can merge in ways that are good, but I think that this sense of sameness and achieving like in a relationship. Let's think of a relationship, which when you think of emotions, you think of your relationship with another person, with your job, how you feel about things, right? If you are in a relationship with somebody and you are constantly walking on eggshells to ensure that, that the rules of engagement are the same on both ends, I think that can be a good thing. I think equality is a good thing. I think that the checks and balances between people, that should be definitely taken seriously, right? You should treat people fairly. But like I said, fairness is kind of a man-made concept. And justice is a man-made concept. And it's all subjective. And in reality, in every relationship, whether it's to a person, a place, or a thing, there's going to be a dominant person in that relationship. There's no real balance. Even 50-50 balance between anybody. I don't believe that. I think that you can have this illusion of balance between people where it's like, yes, we both use the car the same amount. I treat you completely as well as you treat me all the time. Like in every single breath that is uttered, I am completely fair and honest with you. Every time, and you reciprocate the same exact thing to me. I think that it's good to try to achieve that, but I don't think it's true. I don't think I don't think anybody really does that. And I think that there's an imbalance, and I think sometimes, like, a relationship works because of an imbalance. Like, say a job. I get a job. You have a hierarchy of people. You have people that are in charge. Because and really it's not always fair why they're in charge. Some people are in charge and they don't deserve to be in charge, right? This card has a lot to do with like deserve. Like things like deserve, and in theory it does. Deserve and justice and all that kind of stuff. This version of that card is more about adjusting. Like making the proper adjustments to achieve that sense of balance in your environment, your relationships, where you can achieve something that works for you, or the whole, or whatever it is you're asking the card about, right? But in a work setting, there's a hierarchy, and if everybody were to be even Steven and on the same playing field, and that might be good. But if you were to try to apply that rule to how people actually are, then the hierarchy would still emerge anyways. There would still be people that would dominate, and there would still be people who are submissive. And in some scenarios, the ecosystem is actually more balanced because of that. Because some people dominate and some people are submissive. So, it's tricky, this idea of balance and fairness. And, I think one of the, to draw a connection to like real life events, social justice has gotten a bad rap from people who call people who want a sense of fairness social justice warriors. Like, it's unreasonable to want fairness and for people to have the same opportunities. And I totally think that people should have the same opportunities. But their argument is that, well, people, we aren't equal. We aren't equal. So that's going the other way, is that people say that we aren't equal. And I don't think we are equal. But I think that we should, and this is where it comes in different demographics people are talking about. Well, men and women in different races, and it gets real dicey, right? And I don't think color has anything to do with anything. But I do think that some people have more opportunities, right? Given that, how much money they're born with. And then, there are some groups of people, and it's not fair, but there are some groups of people that are held in higher regard than others. Blah, blah, blah. This is such a dicey subject. But there's a lot of discord right now in terms of, there always has been. This isn't right now. It always is relevant. There's always been discord in terms of how to fairly treat people. Nobody can agree on how people should be treated fairly. Some people think that in the 50s, whenever women knew their role, right? Knew their role. Let me do the air quotes again. And men knew their role. Things were easier, right? And then certain groups of people knew their role, and other groups of people knew their role. Like, this knowing of roles made things easier because you could compartmentalize people, and they did their thing, you did your thing. But even then, there was rebellion and uprisings and upheaval. So, an adjustment. Basically, every generation has had to deal with an adjustment of trying to achieve this concept of balance and fairness and justice. And it's always changing. And it always will change, because there's no true justice. There is power and the inequality thereof, and it's always moving around. And how this card relates to the Ten of Cups, which is at the end of the emotional cup cycle, and it's past the zenith of the Nine of Cups, and it's starting to stagnate and become stale again. I think that a focus on this clinical idea of fairness can disturb the cups and bring them down. And I think that it's important to focus on this idea of fairness. But I think too much of it in certain settings. And I'm not going to specify, but I'm going to leave it up to the viewer to interpret certain settings where the idea of something being fair is just harped on. It's like, well, then you need to question, if you're harping on it that much, then maybe that relationship isn't the one, and you should start over and find a fresh love. But if you study this card and you study the fairness, and you can work it out, then you can achieve that again. But sometimes that's not always the case. Sometimes you just can't come to an agreed on sense of balance with this card, and then that happiness that once was starts to deteriorate. So in conclusion, the Ten of Cups, satiety, Satiety. Go look it up and have one of the robots tell you how to pronounce it. I don't know. And adjustment, the way they go together, in my interpretation, is that it's important to have a sense of fairness in your relationship to anything, but you have to remember that fairness is subjective, and that if a conclusion can't be reached within a reasonable amount of time concerning fairness between two people, then maybe some brand new ideas need to be brought to the table, or some pieces need to be moved around. Some people need to get out of some relationships, or they need to re-examine their relationships to the thing in question. And that's it. Sometimes adjustment can affect your sense of being sated in life, for good or for bad. I wish I could come up with a better conclusion. Anyways, that's all for now. Gurley Vines signing off. Till next time.